This is Troy Black. Doug Smith is with me. We're going to be talking about Apple's new digital ID system that they are rolling out. So, obviously, we just saw the UK announce this mandatory digital ID thing. That happened. Well, many people don't know that Apple just dropped a digital passport that could quietly become a new standard of identification. We're going to talk about the details here. Is this something Apple is doing independently, or are they making deals behind closed doors with the government? Is this something the government's pushing? We're going to get into that. And this feels like a soft launch that could potentially lead to a mandate at some point, which would be bad news, obviously. And, for those in the room that are Christian and that have read the book of Revelation, does this have anything to do with the mark of the beast? We'll talk about that. So let's look at this. This article here, new digital ID scheme to be rolled out across USA. Obviously, there's a huge pushback against this. We did a video on it back in September of this year. That this is a digital ID system that is mandatory in the UK if you want to work. It's called Right to Work. And, they rolled it out at the right time, I guess, in one sense, because they were essentially trying to provide this as the answer to the illegal immigration, and illegal workers benefiting from coming in illegally and taking jobs, that kind of stuff. They're trying to roll it out as a solution to that. But I mean, the obvious solution would be to just close the border and actually crack down on illegal immigration. And instead, they use this as a means of, let's get everybody into the digital system right now, and we'll do it in a way that makes it look like we're the good guys, So it's not great, and a lot of people kind of saw through the smoke screen and push back. So there's been a lot of outrage. There have been not stampedes, but what do you call them? Parades. What are those called in
protests?
The UK? Protests, but also here in the States as well.
Sometimes they are stampedes. It's true.
Yeah, it's sadly, but here in the States as well, people have been pushing back against this idea and saying we don't want this, right? Well, what if you started rolling it out in a more subtle way, and it was a way that we volunteered for the system instead of forcing it, instead of making it mandatory? Well, let's look at what Apple's doing right now. So Apple introduces digital ID, a new way to create and present an ID in Apple Wallet. So Apple's taking a different approach, and they're marking this as a digital wallet. So instead of making this mandatory to work, it's voluntary, and it makes your life so much easier. Specifically according to them, specifically with TSA. So if you've ever flown, you know what a hassle it is to get into an airport, out of an airport, through an airport, everything about it. So anything to make it easier and smoother of a process obviously sounds inviting, right? It's a pill that's easy to swallow because it's not mandatory. But the question we're asking today is this leading to something that could be mandatory, right? In case you don't know, Apple already has an option where you can add your driver's license to your digital wallet, and I've flown and I've had my plane tickets added to my digital wallet. So there's certain things you can put in there. But this is what Apple's Vice President Jennifer Bailey said. With the launch of digital ID, we're excited to expand the way users can store and present their identity. Since introducing the ability to add a driver's license or state ID to Apple Wallet in 2022, we've seen how much users love having their ID right on their devices. So obviously there are some pros to this, right? But the big con and the big question we're asking is like, okay, what happens when this gets combined? Like, because technically you can already add your debit or credit card to your Apple Wallet as well. So there's already a connection point there for your money, right? Your ID identification, your money, someday maybe your work, so it's like
legal documents and stuff like that.
Everything in one place, and it's connected to this centralized digital ID. Like that's the potential problem we're seeing, right? So Doug, what are your initial thoughts on this? And then a little bit, I want to get into, is there a government system or program or agenda behind this? Is this a private thing with Apple, or is the government connected? And I want to talk through some of the connecting points that we found, because I think it's pretty interesting.
I mean, it's the classic frog in boiling water approach, which works the best, for getting people to do something that they wouldn't otherwise want to do. Even like me being ultra conspiracy theorist, I use some of these things. And I think it does make my life easier. I do have, and sometimes you get kind of pinched into this position where I had a debit card, and for some reason with this particular debit card, I could only have one card. Like I couldn't give my wife the card, and we use it for our groceries. So guess what? I added it to my wallet so that like my Apple Wallet so that it would be available to me on my phone in case my wife had my card. And
Right.
it, it makes it easier. And I don't think the debit card company did that on purpose. They just wouldn't give me more than one card. But that, and then, like Amazon returns and stuff like that, you can put those in your wallet, and it really is a whole lot easier. It's just a click of a button instead of trying to take a screenshot or go back into wherever you kept your information and pull it up again. It's just right there. And so when this stuff gets represented, or presented, it's not a very large leap of logic to conclude that people are just going to do this on their own. This does not have to be forced down our throats. So it's interesting. And I think their ploy is going to work. Bottom line.
Well, I'm hoping and praying that this doesn't turn into a mandatory thing anytime soon. But obviously, I'm going to be pushing back against it if it does. But let's look at how the government is involved, even with what's happening at Apple right now with this whole digital ID, this voluntary process. So we're going to look into that right after we hear a quick message from our sponsor. Investing can be confusing and scary, but it doesn't have to be. Genesis Gold Group takes the guessing out of the game and guides you on your gold investment journey. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections, kind of like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there, 100% owned by you. So don't wait to get started. Visit filibustedgold.com today for a free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.
I just saw the little Neil McDonough emblem or whatever text on that ad. I thought it was funny. I was like, oh, he's actually in that ad. That's cool. Anyway, the most obvious government connection here is with the TSA, because that's literally what Apple announced. They've got over 250 different locations that they're doing a pilot run on this project with the TSA specifically. But when you think about it on the surface, you're like, okay, big deal. But then when you really dig down deep, you're like, hold on a second. This means that Apple has partnered with the government to implement a test run on digital IDs. For those who don't know, the TSA is under the Department of Homeland Security. This is a government arm. And I pulled out this quote from this article that you got pulled up here, because I just thought it was an interesting thing for one of our representatives to say. This is, I believe it was Rep Jimenez from Florida. It's kind of hard to read these things sometimes. I think I figured out the right person. Either way, some representative of our government was saying this to Congress. I am pleased that TSA is making tremendous progress with digital IDs through partnerships with states and global tech leaders such as Apple and Google. TSA is working to integrate mobile driver licenses and other forms of digital identification into their security screening process. So this is a big deal, and it's been happening kind of under the radar a little bit. Apple is definitely working very diligently to develop the requirements and patents to make their devices compliant with the federal regulations. So right now, technically, this project or program is not federally approved. There's like a temporary allowance for it. So you can't rely on the digital ID to be your identification just yet. It is just a segue into making it quicker and easier, which honestly, I don't really understand how that works. If it's not a legitimate form of ID, how can you present it to the TSA and have them give you the thumbs up? That doesn't really make sense to me, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Maybe that's the only place government related that it applies, that it can work or something like that.
Yeah, it could be something like that. So part of the intention behind what they're doing is they're trying to make it legal to connect your device to you in a legal way. So in other words, your phone becomes your ID, and they want it to be transferable too. So whenever you upgrade your phone, it's still connected to you, and they don't have the details of this yet, but it's still connected to you so that your IDs and all of your legal documents transfer with that. And you don't have to.
Right, and we have technology where, on your phone where it's reading your eye or it's reading your thumbprint or something, and it's scanning you in order to, so if you have all of that combined, it's like, well, then all of a sudden your ID someday is connected to your eye, or your thumbprint or whatever it may be.
It's all very sci-fi. But so the legality of using your Apple Wallet would be, these are like things to expect to come down the pipeline. This isn't happening just yet, but this is, I believe, are the next steps of what we're going to start seeing happen. Is that they'll make it legal for basic things with your identification, like traffic violations, age restricted purchases, and minimum purchases for things like whatever it is you use your ID for now in a really basic sense. You'll be able to do that with your phone pretty soon. And then the next one after that, I think, will be voting, because that's going to be a big deal. And I think they're going to make
Yeah.
a huge deal out of illegal voting. And it's going to be, well, you have to use this program if you want
Right.
your vote to count, which
The
technically isn't mandatory.
The
Not
same
you don't have to
game
vote.
in the UK. Yeah, exactly. The same game that the UK is playing, they're setting up to play that same game. So yeah. So you discovered this interesting connection between Apple and the current administration. And obviously, I'm not lumping Trump into this as some sort of government plot or agenda or whatever, because I don't think, Trump is even involved in this. But, and it's not everything that the government is doing is represented by one person, right? But at the same time, we have the deep state. At the same time, we have the powers that be behind a lot of the politicians, a lot of the people that are running the government, and things that they want to see taking place. We've got all of the tech giants like Palantir, all that kind of stuff, where it's like they want to be merged with the government as much as they can, so that the restrictions are removed and they're able to get their technology into the infrastructure of the U.S. in different ways, like government approved ways. So you've got a lot of different things going on here, but you found this connection between Apple and the current administration. What is that?
So think of it this way. This is a little bit of speculation, but it's a pretty solid speculation. If you take the hands in pockets metaphor quite literally, if you saw two people walking down the street and their hands were in each other's pockets, you would think that they probably had a pretty deep relationship. Well, that's what's happening in the White House right now. Is we have a bunch of big tech giants and other investors who are giving money to Trump's ballroom. And you really think about like who these people are and what they're involved in. Palantir is one of them, by the way. But Apple and Google are on this list of people who have contributed to the ultimately $300 billion ballroom, or million.
I did not know it was that expensive.
Sometimes those numbers just get so big, it's hard to remember which one is which, because at that point you're just like, whatever, it's crazy. What? But so Apple and Google are on this list, along with other tech giants.
Are you sure it's not 300 million? Because 300 billion sounds too. In
my notes, I put a B, and I think it's in that article. If you 300 million,
it's million.
Yeah,
it's right
I think I did a typo in my article.
Okay,
yeah. When I saw that, I was like, I don't know about that. That sounds insane.
I was going to say
$300 million is a lot of money, regardless.
That's great. Man. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and I will say this. It can be a coincidence. It could be a coincidence, obviously, because they might be looking for favors based on their donations and all that. So it's like it could be that. But that doesn't mean that they're not connected. Also, like we saw that recent like tech giant dinner that Trump had, and obviously he's trying to reinvigorate our economy. So it's one of the best places to do that. Is to reestablish some of the incentives, for these industries to grow, the companies to grow. I get that, right? And so that's part of what Trump is doing, and I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, also you start to see these connections, and you start asking questions. Like, is Apple
scratching backs,
right? Is Apple and the government, is this more of like a behind the scenes agenda that we see playing out here?
Yeah, it's really hard not to see that, especially when there's a lot of incentive and money involved with this in general, and money equals power in this sense, because obviously all these people have plenty of money, but there are multiple grants and funding available for private companies to take advantage of that the government already has in play and has for years. So there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars available. And I just pulled out a couple quick examples of this. They've been granted to multiple government sources throughout the different states with the explicit goal of developing and refining identity management. In other words, digital IDs, basically. And the couple big ones are login.gov and ID.me. Both of these entities have millions of dollars at their disposal to transition us to the next level of digital identification. And the Gemalto article has this quote: "We are pleased to engage in this multi-year pilot program designed to address the many different opportunities surrounding digital identities. Our goal is to work with organizations to determine the best technology and implementation strategy that will maintain both citizen privacy and security." And that was in 2016.
Yeah.
So for the last decade or so, we have been having these private and public
Hmm.
opportunities for millions of dollars worth of investments back and forth between the government and whatever companies want to be involved in it. And most likely it's going to be the companies that have the most opportunity for that. Clearly, Apple is a leader in this industry because they have made it so easy to make these things happen. And scrolling through some of these patents and stuff, it's so complex. It's no wonder that they're trying to partner with software or companies like Apple who have already done it, because it's
Hmm.
insane trying to make this happen, and they've been trying to figure it out on their own. And I think they're finally at a point where they're like, you know what, we're just going to partner with big tech and make it happen. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and we've seen this happening for a while. I mean, even login.gov, was an Obama initiative, but it started as a digital ID program, right?
Right.
And it eventually got dumbed down to login.gov, so
Yeah.
thank God. Biden tried to pass a mandate for digital ID, and that got shut down. He literally signed, I think, an executive order or whatever 3 days before Trump uh, was inaugurated. It literally was like on his way out the door. He was trying to establish a digital ID mandate, and Trump shut that down earlier this year.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're trying to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And they're working very hard. They're putting a lot of money into it, because we see these initiatives, we see these grants, we see these programs. And I think what you're saying, Doug, is right. I think this is a soft launch, and I think
Yeah.
they are conditioning us as
Mhm.
the citizens of the United States to, number one, have an enemy that we're fighting so hardcore, like in this case, illegal immigration, that
Mhm.
we'll be on board with the solution once it comes, but also to, on the other side of the coin, to just voluntarily, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to slowly like get used to this. So that once they take that final step, we're fine with it. Like at
Yeah.
that point, we're already okay with it. And I want to transition to this, talking about the mark of the beast, right? Because a lot of people have especially Christians, and not everybody watching is Christian necessarily, but if you are a Christian, you've read Revelation, you've seen where it says there's going to be this mark where you won't be able to buy or sell, without the
Mhm.
mark, right? And so it's like, obviously, Christians are not going to be taking the mark, but at the same time, I think some people are living in fear of accidentally taking a mark. And I want to
Mm.
distill those fears. I don't believe it's going to be accidental. Like, I don't think it's going to be, whoop, I woke up one day and my my iPhone was the mark of the beast, and I didn't realize it, and I had an iPhone.
Right.
It's like I should have gone
And
with
it
Android.
implanted a chip into your wrist without you knowing overnight because you wore your Apple Watch to sleep. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not going to be like that. I believe when Jesus says, even the elect will be deceived if that were possible. I believe he's talking about an ideology. I believe
Yeah.
he's talking about something that's very anti the truth of God's word. That is the deception. And when that deception is in place, then the technical thing, the technology and the practical application of that's going to be an easy, like swallow to a pill to swallow. But it's the deception happens with the truth, right? And so
Yeah.
once we've said, because the people that know the truth are going to look at the mark and the ideology behind it and go, I'm not accepting that, because I also have to sign my name on these things, like
Yeah.
they're telling me I have to agree to that. And
Yeah.
so the ones that will take it are the ones that are already deceived, right? They're the
Yeah.
ones that say, no, good is evil and evil is good.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's where the true deception is taking place. So it's not going to be an accidental thing but at the same time, we need to be wise and realize what's taking place and what
Yeah.
they're pushing us towards, right? And so if we can push back, we will, right? Like we
Yeah.
will in a loving way, a godly way, but also a way that stands up for people's rights and for the truth and for a healthy, like, free society. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why, if y'all have not seen it, we recently did an episode on JD Vance. That's why there are some people on the right that I know a lot of people love that I'm concerned about for various reasons,
Yeah.
because they're so in bed with the tech giants and the companies like Palantir.
Palantir. Yeah.
They're so aligned with these things that it's like, wait a minute, is this system really good for us to, like walk blindly into as a culture or as a nation? I don't know, like it doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel right. So what are your thoughts on that, Doug? Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah, it's alarming to think about things like Palantir and how it can be so deceptive because it's like a supposedly Christian run company, because like Peter Thiel is, a Christian. And I can't help but look at all these things and see the deception that it's frustrating to see the deception that is using the truth, but I guess that's just the way it works,
Right.
I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, he's also a transhumanist, so it's like, well, how
Yeah.
Christian is that? Like,
Well,
you know,
he makes a great argument. If you're not a Christian, he makes a great argument for how it
right,
works.
right.
And that's what's scary.
No, I think that's what it is. I think it's what's going to come down to. It's going to come down to a human argument that makes sense to the natural mind versus a spiritual truth that is discerned because you have the Spirit of God. Like that literally is what's going to come down to.
And that's why it's so important to have the Spirit of God in you, because you cannot rely on your own logic, on your own reasoning to figure these things out when it finally comes to fruition. And you have that finality moment of now's the time to decide. If you do not have the Holy Spirit in you and you do not know his voice, you're very likely going to make a bad decision. So it's super important to do that.
Yeah, it's critical. It's critical, and I think, but yeah, I just love how, like, Jesus says, do not worry about tomorrow. Do not worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink. Your Heavenly Father knows you need these things. And I think the more that I see the culture heading in this direction and some of these systems in place and stuff, I'm like, okay, I've got to go back to that truth. I've got to plant myself there. I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to worry about my life. I'm going to trust him. And I am going to stand up for freedom, when it's necessary.
Yeah.
So y'all let us know what you think about this episode in the comments below. Hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next time. Gold is not just a backup plan if the world falls apart. It's an investment opportunity that could set you up for generations. There's never really a bad time to invest in gold, but you want to make sure you have the right guide. And that is where Genesis Gold Group shines. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, their trusted expertise and competitive pricing makes them an easy choice. They offer tangible assets in case of emergencies, but they can also design the perfect IRA just for you. And they'll even cut through all that confusing red tape from the IRS. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer a more high-security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there and 100% owned by you. Genesis Gold Group is a safe, simple, and convenient way to invest. Visit filibustedgold.com today for your free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.